7 minutes until showtime. 6 minutes until showtime.
'You got a beer? Wait, that's for our recipe.
And you're cooking with a dad, with a beer in his hand early in the morning.
5 minutes until showtime. 4 minutes until showtime. 3 minutes until showtime. 2 2 minutes until showtime. 1 minute until showtime. Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the program. This is Trucking with Authority. I'm your host, Kenny Long, and for the next hour, consider me your navigator on your journey to success in business, especially the trucking business. We can talk about anything on the show here tonight, from getting started as a driver, buying your first truck, signing on with a carrier, changing carriers, getting your own authority, dealing with brokers, finding direct shippers, contracts, FMCSA, negotiation, record-keeping requirements, insurance requirements, you name it. This is a show for you. If you have any questions or comments, dial the number at the bottom of your screen, 917-889-9924. Again, it is a call-in radio show, so dial the number 917-889-9924. We are streaming live tonight on all 3 platforms. We are on Blog Talk Radio, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. You have access to us, but let me throw this disclaimer out there. As always, if you are driving and you are watching one of the videos, please turn off the video, call on your phone, 917-889-9924. You can listen live while you drive, and you don't have to worry about any distractions from those live videos. So please turn off the videos and go ahead and call in. If you call in, if you're on the line, you can press 1 on your keypad at any time, and you can get your questions or comments. Tonight we have a pretty good show. It's been a few weeks since I've been on, and for those of you hardcore followers, thank you very much for your support. I had a lot of comments and messages, emails, Facebook posts, and so forth asking where I've been. It's been busy. We've been working on several projects, and of course we had just some other events going on. So thank you guys that have hung out waiting for us, and hopefully we've got some good stuff for you tonight. Freight rates are awesome, aren't they? Freight rates are killing it. I was looking back at my previous shows. It's been, I guess this will be the 4th week in a row. 4 weeks ago I did a show, so I missed 3 weeks. And 4 weeks ago, the topic of the show was the Great Freight, because we were in the middle of this downturn, and it's looking good now, right? Looking better. And I'm sure some of you are kicking your phone down the street, throwing it out the window, whatever, because I know it's not gotten a lot better for most of you. for some of you. But it's pretty uniform across the board. Several of my own drivers at Patriot Star are complaining a little bit about rates. They're having to put a lot more effort into finding a good load. Most of them are telling me that they're able to do it, but they've never had to work so hard for it. And that just happens to be tis the season. Let me pause my live videos here. I distract myself. I end up watching this guy on TV, and he gets distracting. So let me turn him off because, yeah. All right. Try to watch the comments as I'm going here, but then I end up talking to myself, looking at this guy staring back at me with the microphone in his face. So let's see if I can get away from that. But the freight rates are awesome. For those of you that have already thrown your phones out the window, hopefully you find another way to stream this, because freight rates are killing it right now. Freight volumes, the market has shifted, obviously, from what we were at about 2 months ago. All through June and about the first week of July, we were setting records. Just absolutely killing it. Every segment, van, reefer, flatbed, every segment was just out of this world amazing, but they're still really good. Unfortunately, a lot of us in this industry have very, very short-term memories. Now, what really prompted this show tonight and this topic was I had a message earlier today. New owner-operator just got his own authority, was actually a company driver, jumped right in with his own authority and was asking me if he made a big mistake because he thought he did something wrong. This is the culling of the herd right now. And it's not even a bad market, but it's a wake-up call for a lot of people. This particular driver, company driver, saw the amazing things happening on Facebook and all the YouTubers bragging about their great rates and the masters out there talking about how great their rates are, and got their own authority in May. Went out, bought a truck, got their authority in May, and were ready to jump in and just slaughter the market. Of course, when you get your own authority, you have a little bit of a tough time that first few weeks just getting your feet wet. Probably just started to get the hang of it in June, maybe a month or so in, maybe a week or two of really good running, and they probably thought to themselves, this is awesome. This is a great choice. This is an amazing thing, a great opportunity. I'm so happy I did this. And then July happened. 4th of July holiday. We had a good week that week, but it was a split week with the holiday landing on a Wednesday. But the second week of July, we started to feel it. Third week of July, it was apparent. Fourth week of July, there was no question. We were in the summer slump, but that summer slump happens every year. For a lot of drivers that jumped into this industry in the first half of the year, they are scared right now. They think they made some big mistakes. And if you're listening to me, if you're one of those drivers, hold on. Don't worry. It could get a lot worse, but it's not bad now. So before the show today, I did a little preparation. I went on DAT Rate View. Now, DAT is the biggest load board out there. They have a lot of data to back up their statistics. And their Rate View product is one of the ways that they can put that data out to the rest of us. Now, those of you that subscribe to their load boards at any level, you have some version of their Rate View product. Even at their lowest level, you'll get some 90-day averages on what the lane pays. Well, 90-day averages are a very, very broad picture. If you can imagine in Florida, the state of Florida in this produce season of April, May, June, Florida rates are great. But July, they drop off like a rock. So it always happens every year. And if you're looking at 90-day averages out of Florida, and you're looking at those even in July or August, you're looking at old data that would probably show a very irrelevant number. In June, we were seeing dry van loads coming out of Florida paying $4 per mile. But in July, it may have been sub $2 per mile. But if you looked at that average, here you could be in the third or fourth week of July when the market has completely tanked, especially in the Florida market, and plus add to that the summer slump, you're looking at 90-day averages that are still showing $3+ per mile. So 90-day averages are very, very misleading. The higher levels, when you get up to the $99 and up package with DAT, you start to get 15-day averages. Now, 15-day averages just back 2 weeks. That's a lot more accurate and a lot better information to have when you're negotiating on any particular lane. If you want to dump some money into it, if you have I honestly can't justify this for 1 or even 2 trucks. Maybe you get into, small fleet. But at my level, we've got 18 trucks running, plus I've got a brokerage going, and I need to have as much rate information as possible. So I subscribe to RateView. The RateView product is completely separate from the load board. Some of those numbers are built into the load board searches, but RateView is completely separate. Now, I went into RateView before the show, and I printed off these graphs. What's interesting about RateView is you have 13 months of data, a window of 13 months. So instead of just the 2-week period or instead of 90 days, I can look all the way back to last year. This month plus the 12 previous months, which means including this month a year ago. And when I look at these numbers from a year ago, and then I look at the comments on Facebook, I'm wondering how many people will survive if the market really, really turns. It's not a bad market right now. It really isn't. It's actually a fantastic market. A year ago, we were begging to see these kind of rates. So let me share some just overall numbers. And again, looks like we have several callers on the line. If you have any questions, any comments, anything you'd like to add to this, press 1 on your keypad. If you're streaming live, please dial the number 917-889-9924. I want to hear your input on what you're seeing out there on the market, with the spot market, with the rates. I want to know how you're seeing the market shift as we go through the summer. And today, average rates right now for all 3 segments with a van, we are at $2.16 per mile. $2.16 per mile on average nationwide. For the reefers, we are at $2.50 per mile on average. Now, these are the monthly averages as well. So, flatbeds, we are at $2.67 per mile. Those are very respectable numbers. If you're getting those kind of numbers, you should be putting some money in the bank right now. Those are great numbers. But a lot of people are crying doom and gloom right now. The sky is falling. If we look at the short term, week over week, we have seen, and just to focus on the van market, we have seen roughly 6 cents per mile weekly, week over week drop off from the highs that we were a month ago. So each week we've dropped off 6 cents, 6 cents, 6 cents. Until this past week, our averages only dropped about 2 pennies. That is telling us a lot. What that's telling us is the market is starting to equalize, starting to level out. We're not seeing quite as drastic of the drop. So we may see a little bit more drop this week, but it should be pretty level, maybe a penny or two up or down, we'll see. But as we go into the following week, and then especially the week after that, and then by then we're in the first and second week of September, we should start seeing rates stabilizing and back to increasing again. But let's talk about what we're seeing right now. Let me go back to the van. I always like to use van because that is the biggest commodity market out there. Vans, anybody can get a van. There's no skill required. And if you're driving a van and you're yelling at me because I'm just a guy sitting here behind a desk, that's my primary business is van. We're about half and half van and flatbed step deck right now, but the majority of trucks on the road, the cheapest freight out there are the van drivers. So it's good to look at that because that is a good indicator across the board. Right now, currently $2.16 per mile on average nationwide. If you are in Miami and you're telling me that you can't get $2.16, go bury your head in the sand. You don't know what you're doing. Okay, you're in Miami. We know that that market's horrible. There are plenty of tools out there, and I've talked about this in other shows. DAT load board, the truck stop load board, 1, 2, 3 load board. All of the load boards have plenty of tools to try to judge what the market looks like. If you're in one of these horrible markets and you cannot get, we already know that. You don't need to tell us. I know you're not going to get $2.16 per mile out of Miami. It's not going to happen. Should be able to do pretty good going south, but you're not getting it out of there. I know right now the Texas market has fallen off the map a little bit. You're not going to get $2.16 per mile on average overall out of Texas. There might be a few home runs. I always get that comment too. Well, I did it. Well, you may have, but overall, that market, there are more loads than trucks in that market right now. You're not going to get these rates. However, you will probably get better than these rates going in. Okay, so on 1,000 miles, if you did $4 a mile and dead-headed back, that's $4,000. If you did $2 a mile round trip, that's $4,000. If you did $3 a mile one way and $1 a mile back, that's still $4,000. Still going to average on 1,000 miles. It's still going to average $2 per mile. Right? It's there and back, round trip. Okay? So $2.16 per mile. Everybody's running for the hills because the sky is falling. 1 year ago, exactly 1 year ago, we were at $1.79 per mile. $1.79 per mile, and we were climbing. $1.79 per mile was a good rate. We were happy to see it. That was not the lowest point last year. The lowest point was in the $1.50 somethings. So this was an increase. This was better than earlier in the year. $1.79. We're currently at $2.16. We did not even break the $2 mark until October last year. Prior to October last year, we were not above the $2 per mile mark in the van segment early 2015, coming out of the Christmas season of 2014. We went for nearly 2 full years, never once broke $2 per mile on average with vans. We got there October last year. On average, we were $2.02. We were right there at that $2 per mile mark. We climbed. January was a peak at $2.24 per mile. Tape a little bit. February of this year, on average, $2.12 per mile. We're at $2.16 right now. Earlier this year, when we were raving about how great the rates were, this year, February, $2.12 per mile on average. We're better than that now, and everybody's complaining that the rates are horrible. We're better than we were then back in February. We were talking about how great rates were. We were talking about February, it's a slow season, and and we were talking about how great it was. $2.12 per mile in February? I can't believe it's this strong. That was our attitude in February. $2.16 now, we're complaining. March, $2.14. April, $2.15. May, $2.15. We're at $2.16 now. The first half of this year, we were setting records. We were amazed at how good the rates were. 3 months in a row, we were below what we currently are right now on average. June, we finally started to climb. We still really started to set records. It was actually, these are monthly averages, so it actually started to climb in May. But in June, we got up to $2.31 per mile for the vans on average for the month of June. And these are broker to carrier spot market rates. July average, now this is the average for the full month, $2.27 per mile. Now, granted, we dropped off drastically since June and July, down to $2.16. We're 11 cents per mile cheaper on average this week than we were for the month of July on average. 10, 11 cents. Again, week over week, the past 4 weeks, we've dropped roughly 6 cents per mile. We came down from a peak. Now, I've got to say this. We were setting records then, setting records with the rates that we were seeing. We dropped 10 cents, 11 cents a mile now, and we're running like we don't know what to do. The sky is falling. It's not that bad. As a matter of fact, it's pretty doggone good. The rates are out there, and they're good. And, you know, my show a few weeks ago, The Great Freight Fright, I don't know what everybody's afraid of. Might have to make a few more phone calls, You got to definitely study the market and position your truck in the right spot, but it's not bad. Let's go over to reefer. Reefer is one of the bigger segments. People run to reefer because reefer definitely has better rates overall on average than van. August last year, 2017, we're at $2.08 per mile. We are currently at $2.50 per mile. $2.50 per mile. 42 cents better currently than we were 1 year ago. 42 cents. There are drivers that don't make 42 cents per mile. We are making that much more now than we were a year ago on the spot market. Rates are good. We need to start studying the markets, position your truck to take advantage of the rates that are out there. Started to climb in September, $2.24. We had a peak in January coming out of the Christmas season there, $2.64. Dropped off again in February. Okay, so here we are this week. This week, on average, $2.50 per mile. February, $2.41 per mile. We were thrilled in February that the rates were that strong. March, $2.40. Still 10 cents a mile cheaper than they are currently on average. $2.42 in April, still 8 cents a mile cheaper than they are on average. In April and May, we were absolutely thrilled. Does anybody remember this? Anybody? Do we remember what the rates were like just a few months ago? I understand a year ago you might not remember, but just a couple of months ago? Come on, guys. What's going on? Okay, May, $2.53. So the month of May was the first time that we were better for the full year, other than the peak season when we were coming out of there. June, we were up. We peaked in June at $2.70 per mile on average. July, $2.59, and down to $2.50 right now. $2.50 per mile on average. Those are fantastic rates. We have a caller that has an interesting comment. We're going to get to you, Richard, in just a moment. I'm going to go over the flatbed rates. Now, flatbed, of all the segments, traditionally, historically, flatbed is always the most profitable. Well, I can't necessarily say profitable, but always the most, the highest rate per mile on average. It always has been, always will be, typically slower in the wintertime. This year was a bit of an anomaly. August last year, $2.18 per mile. Now, those are some nice rates. People that were in vans last year were selling their trucks or selling their trailers, going and jumping into flatbeds because they were flocking to the best market out there, $2.18 per mile. Those were fantastic rates. We were thrilled with those rates. Currently, this year, $2.67 per mile right now. Those are the averages as of Saturday last week. $2.67. You cannot complain about these rates today. The volumes are thin. We get that. The market has thinned out. I get that. The rates are still phenomenal. The rates are out there. You have to know the market. We have to study the market. You have to know a little more. In June, when all three of these segments peaked, and flatbed peaked for the average of the month of June, $2.82, and van again, $2.31, and $2.70 for the reefer. All three segments peaked in June. Those were the record highs. Record highs. Records of all-time highs. All-time highs. They never got that high before in history ever. Those were record highs in all three segments. We're down to $2.67 with the flatbed right now. $2.67, 93 cents more than the vans were making a year ago per mile. Those are not bad rates. If you can't make money at those rates, you're doing something wrong. You need to control your expenses, and that really is the topic tonight. I wanted to go through these numbers. If you are afraid of these numbers right now, if you're having that hard of a time, you're going to have to look at some other problems. You've got an issue. For the drivers that started in the first half of this year and your memory is that short, or maybe you just didn't really fully saturate yourself in the market then because you were just getting started, what we have right now currently is a fantastic freight market. We are still in a carrier's market. I'm going to take Richard because he's already on the call here. Richard in Florida, welcome to the show. I see your comment. What are your thoughts on this? Whoops.
Hey, Kenny.
There we go.
Tonight?
Great. What's your thought on the freight rates? I can see Elizabeth put some notes in here on what you're trying to say, but I've just got about two little quick little comments. But so I've got the gist of what you're getting at, and I really think that this is important to get out. So what are you thinking here?
Okay. First off, I live in Naples, Florida. The only way further south you can go is Miami, and as a matter of fact, I came out of Miami today. You do have to put a little more effort in it, but you can get, on an average, close to $2.10 a mile coming out. Living proof of doing it. I do it some of the times, not all the time. Law of averages. But my concern, and it was widely publicized, not only in U.S. Today, but some of the feeds that I've seen online, that there was an article from a major company in Florida basically saying and admitting, this was a CEO saying that we are the problem in the trucking industry right now. The shippers and the brokers are driving the rates down and suppressing the rates. And this is why that people are jumping out of their trucks in some cases. What can we do to get around that?
Okay. All right. First of all, I read that article. I think you may have misinterpreted some of what he was trying to say there. The article basically said that brokers are also seeing record profits this year. Okay. Now we're not saying necessarily that they're the problem with the market, but they are also seeing record profits this year. Now, typically, brokers make a smaller percentage, obviously, than the trucks do. Typically around between 10 and 20%, on average around 12%. So 12% of what they charge the shipper is what the broker tends to keep, typically. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Now, this year, the reason that freight rates have been astronomically high versus over years past is because of the volume. We have shipped more freight, more truckload tonnage this year than in any year past. The economy is absolutely out of control, booming, fantastic right now. We have been shipping a ton of freight. There are a lot more truckloads out there and less trucks to do it. The ELD mandate played a little bit of a part in it because it did take some trucks off the road, took some capacity off the road. Even the trucks that were out here maybe have tightened up a little bit on their hours of service. It has taken, there are some 3.5 million trucks on the road, and if each one of those just lost 15 minutes or even 5 minutes due to the hours of service over the ELDs, that's thousands of hours of lost capacity every day. So we've lost capacity from that, but we've also seen huge increases in the amount of volume of truckload freight that's out there. In other words, there are more loads shipping. When there are more loads shipping and the broker takes the same 10, 12, even 20%, whatever their percentage is, they're just making more money off the volume. They're making more money because they're shipping more freight, not necessarily because they're taking more off the top or they're skimming more. Now, the whole thought process that shippers and brokers are trying to push the rates down is I don't know how to say this. There's no good way to say it. Lunch counter talk, okay? There's no supply and demand drives the market. If the load has to go, they have to pay they have to pay to ship it. There's no two ways about it. So here's the thing. If there are 100 loads and one truck, if that one truck takes the first load, the other 99 loads are going to sit there. If the value of that load is enough that they have to pay more to do it, they're going to have to pay a truck. Let's say you're in Miami And Miami is not necessarily a good example because the Miami market's not the greatest. But whatever city, let's say you're in Knoxville, Tennessee, Miami, Florida, whatever it is. If you're the only truck, there are 100 loads that have to move. Somebody will pay you more to move it. It's competition, supply and demand. They need the truck. If there's not enough trucks, they have to pay more to try to convince it. Now, where's the breaking point? People get hung up on the idea that it's the supply and demand of trucks. That's part of it. It's also the supply and demand of the product being shipped. For example, there are certain areas where there are hundreds of loads posted and they're all mulch. Mulch can wait. Mulch doesn't have to move. So they can wait until the rates turn around. So that they could have 100 loads posted, and if none of them are worth paying more than $1 a mile, nobody's going to ship it. Doesn't matter how many trucks are there, how few trucks are there. Those loads can wait. The trucks aren't putting any pressure on them. The whole idea of let it sit and rot, they will let it sit and rot. It's mulch. That's what it's for, right? But if it's a truckload of gold bars going to Fort Knox, and there's only one truck, and they're competing against the mulch, who's going to pay more? So the commodity being hauled and the supply and demand of that commodity, combined with the supply and demand of the trucks in the market, are really what drive rates. So when I say it's supply and demand, it's supply and demand on both sides. So brokers can say whatever they want to. A broker can say it's only $1 a mile, I'm not paying any more than $1 a mile. And that freight can sit because maybe it's mulch. Gold bars and you call on it and you're the only truck in the area, they're going to have to pony up. And if you say no, they're going to have to pay you more to convince you. Now I say 1 to 100, maybe there's 99 trucks and 100 loads of gold bars. Whoever is most motivated to get their gold bars moved is going to pay handsomely because they know one load of those gold bars is going to sit today because there are not enough trucks to do it. Which one? The one that won't pay enough is the one that sits. Supply and demand drives the market. Doesn't matter what the shippers or the brokers want to do about it. They're going to have to pay enough to convince the trucks. In some cases, they have to pay enough to convince trucks to come in from other areas. Florida's a good example for that because in the produce season, 9 months out of the year, there are more trucks. There are typically, on average, 4 trucks to every load out of Florida, except for those 3 months, April, May, June, when there are more loads than there are trucks. Freight rates going into the state of Florida increased drastically because they're trying to get as many trucks as possible. Out of the state of Florida, increased drastically because they're trying to convince as many trucks as possible to take their loads. They have to get the trucks. They have to increase the rate to convince the trucks to come out. It's all the supply and demand process. Brokers can say whatever they want to. Shippers can say whatever they want to. I can promise you that that is their goal every day, every shipment, is to keep rates as low as possible. Shippers always want the rates as low as possible. Brokers always want the rates as low as possible. They want to keep that margin, and they want as much in their own pocket as possible. They're always trying to do that. There's no collusion. There's no, big broker union out there that everybody got together. I'll promise you that most brokers don't like each other. They're not colluding with each other to keep rates down. Just like I promise you that most truckers out there are not, and they can say whatever they want to. Oh, let's park them. Let's do whatever. Last time somebody said, let's park all the trucks and see what happens. What happened? Maybe one guy went home for the weekend. Nobody parked their truck. And brokers are doing the same thing. If there's money to be made, they're making the money. It's all supply and demand. What do you think about that theory?
I think that it's a viable thing, but when you have the CEO of that company and I both read that article and said that it is the company's fault, that, if there is some credence to it. I do believe in supply and demand. I do believe in what you're saying as far as commodities are concerned. But when someone tries to offer you less than $1 a mile, and I had this happen to me today, to run a load out, you sort of scratch your head and you say, yeah, thanks, but I'll try later.
You might say that, but some of the other fleets that are trying to get their money out, they will take that load for less than $1 a mile because,
sure,
as I said, and I didn't look at the Florida market, but on average, there are 4 trucks to every load, which means if every one of those trucks is willing to take it for free and just do them a favor, 3 of those 4 trucks are going to leave empty whether they want to or not. So that means they know they could put it on somebody that's just trying to pay for fuel.
That is correct. Thanks again, Ken. I appreciate your input.
All right, absolutely, and I appreciate the comment. Now, it's one of the things I wanted to talk about. Is the whole concept of cheap freight. Now, all right, we know rates are actually still good out there. The markets are regional. We have to be very careful and get ourselves positioned in the right markets. Volumes are down slightly, although they have plateaued. We are starting to see volumes even increase. Rates are still slightly on the decline, and that is all because of the supply and demand we have. One of the reasons that there is a slump like this in the summertime is a lot of the manufacturers traditionally, and it was more so back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, but it's still somewhat carried on currently. The automotive manufacturers, when you went to buy a new car in the 80s, you buy a new model car, you buy it, if you want to buy a 2019 car, you buy it maybe December or January. They don't come out a year ahead of time. So they start building the cars, and it takes several months for those factories to catch up and start building enough to distribute cars across literally the whole world. They have to get those cars out there to get that new model out for that new model year. So they start retooling typically. And when I say retooling, they're literally taking the entire factory, taking all the machines out and all the dies and everything else, taking all that out, putting the new stuff in. And in order to do that, they completely shut the factories down. The only people that work are the tool and die makers and the maintenance guys. Everybody else goes on vacation. Now, that was my dad worked for General Motors, and I remember every summer all of his buddies had 2 weeks off in the summertime, usually around the 4th of July, because they would retool the factories and everything then. Not so much now, as the automotive companies have kind of changed over their methods to the way they retool, and everything's robotic, and it's not as much of a changeover process, but we still have a lot of that carryover. So what happens is there's always a slowdown of production in the summertime. When that slowdown happens, now again, going back to the way it used to be that the factories made everything. Every part of a car used to be made under one roof or in one facility. Now our methods are outsourced. We make stuff in China, import it here, and stick it on the side of the Cadillacs, right? So we have products made all over the world. When that happens, when one factory slows down production to retool, there's a ripple effect across the country. So when it used to be just the Detroit market would slow down because that's when the automotive factories would shut down, now it's across the country. You've got parts manufacturers and that would be shipping parts to Detroit, but now they're making those parts in Alabama, or maybe they're bringing them in from the ports in Jacksonville or Long Beach, California, to bring that stuff in. We have a ripple effect across the whole country, which is leveled this out. We don't have a 2-week window where everything shuts down and that's it. But now we have that slowdown in mid to early July. Here we are mid to late August, and we're still feeling it because it's just spread out over that time frame. Eventually, we're going to catch up. While they were all slowed down, the trucks were still hauling freight in, stocking up the warehouses, stocking up the food warehouses. Maybe they don't need as much automotive product shipped because that factory shut down, but now those trucks that were typically hauling the auto parts are now hauling the food products. So the cold storage warehouses are stocked up. We're starting to see things catch back up. Warehouses are stocked up. Supplies are stocked up. Eventually, things will level out. That typically happens right about now. The mid-August is when a lot of the new RFQs, the new requests for proposals, requests for quote, are submitted and the new contracts are sealed. The markets tend to stabilize. Kids are going back to school. People are going back to work. The warehouses are going to thin out. We're going to get back to business as usual. Summertime is coming to a close. Last week of August, things always tend to stabilize. And as we go into September, things start to pick up. All right. Now, one of the reasons that our friend that started his new company in May is running for the hills and doesn't know what to do, when I asked this person what their cost per mile is, they had no clue. Now, granted, we're only a couple months in. They don't have a lot of history. They had a lot of startup expenses. They didn't really know how to average that out. They just knew that they were profitable, or they thought they were profitable when they were making $2.30 per mile pulling their van in June. They thought that there was good money there. They never thought that the market could turn and they would need to really pinch their pennies. So I will say this. The market is still good, but it could get worse. If the market was to turn, which I think we're kind of leveling out here and will probably go up through the rest of the summer or through the rest of the year, but as we round the corner to 2019, January tends to be okay. As we reach third, fourth week of January, we start to see it taper off. February, I expect it will be worse in February 2019 than it is currently. That is typically the slowest period of the year. If it gets back down to the $1.80 range per mile in a van, will you be able to survive? What can you do now to invest your money to make sure that you will be able to survive in that downtime? I promise you, it's not a good time to go out, buy a new house, a new Harley, upgrade to a new Cadillac, buy the spouse at home some new jewelry, or what have you. Not a good time for that. It's a good time to be putting money in the bank. It's also a good time to be investing in your business and your equipment. If there's things that you can do to reduce your expenses, get your maintenance items done while you have the cash flow. Don't wait until things get tight. If there are things such as oil bypass systems to reduce your maintenance costs, maybe put the fast system on to improve your fuel economy and improve your injector life. Things like the Venomics device, the True Fuel Venomics that I unveiled a few weeks ago. Hopefully we'll have those guys on the show here real soon as well. Something that you put that on and you can maybe improve your shift habits. Or if you have an auto shift like our driver Chris Wright did, there'll be an article coming out about Chris here in a few days. Chris was able to put this device on, and they quickly determined that his shift points in his auto shift transmission were way off, and he was able to reprogram it. Now is the time to make an investment like that to improve your expenses and really tighten up. The only way that you can tighten up your expenses and to really understand your numbers is you have to know them. So now is also a good time to invest in some type of accounting software, get your numbers in check. If you just started, a lot of carriers. I can see Bill Hood is on, he's watching the live stream. Bill Hood, he called in a few weeks ago, but they're running the Velocity Group, Bill and Lauren Hood. They are setting up new authorities. They're doing a great job of it. All the compliance, everything they need. It's a one-stop shop for everything you need to make sure that a new carrier gets set up. They've set up more carriers than ever. They're seeing just an explosion in new carriers right now. FMCSA is backed up because there are so many new applications right now. The first half of this year, people were running to FMCSA to get their new authority. The name of this show is Trucking with Authority. I've been doing it since 2014, encouraging people, go out there and get your authority. But make sure you do it right. I've told people, make sure that you're not going to pay for these scam operations. A lot of people are sending the postcards in the mail, represent themselves as FMCSA or DOT. Don't fall for that garbage. Do it right. I think you can do it yourself, but more and more people, I talked to Bill the other day, more and more people are making huge mistakes on their applications because FMCSA is so backed up that they're taking weeks to reapply. Everything is slowed down. So I would recommend that you guys check out the Velocity Group. Bill Hood and Bill and Lauren are helping people, and it's not an super expensive cost. And they've got an all-inclusive package to get your drug consortium in, make sure your applications are in. All that is super important. Do it right. One of the things I was talking about with Bill the other day is to make sure that you've got your numbers down, and he and I both are looking at systems to help control your numbers. One of the systems I'm looking at currently is TruckLogix. Complete package of, and I don't get a kickback from them. I don't get a kickback from any of this. I'm just making recommendations. It's software to help you run your business and know your numbers. There's no promo code here. It's just software that I've determined seems to work great. So understanding your expenses and where you can save money requires that you first have to know where you're spending your money. Get control of your expenses now while you can afford to have a little bit of leak in your bucket. You can't start bailing water out of the ship when it's already underwater. It's too late. You have to start now. If you have a leak in your bucket, you need to get it out and start patching that now. So now is the time. A lot of people are running for the hills because freight rates have dropped minimally. I mean, we are still a year ago. If we would have saw these rates, these current rates would be record highs. If a year ago, if the rates spiked to what they currently are, this would be a record in all three segments. People are running for the hills because they don't think they're going to survive. If that's you, you have a hole in your bucket. Find it. Patch it now while you can. Rates are good, but you've got to control your expenses. There are a lot of tools out there to help locate these tools. I've never really gotten a kickback from much of anything. TruckLogix is great. The Vnomics True Fuel has helped one of my drivers. I don't get a kickback from them. These types of things, Bill Hood, to make sure that you're set up, the Velocity Group, make sure you're set up right the first time. Minimize your expenses. Try to patch the hole in your bucket. Now, we all leak a little from time to time, but you can patch it now. Don't make the mistake of waiting too long. Looks like we've got a couple callers on the line. Elizabeth needs to get in there and screen those. All right, so that brings us to the concept of cheap freight. Had a little bit of a, kind of went there a little bit with Richard. But with cheap freight, and I know that, I mean, I want to cut this show off promptly at 8 p.m. tonight. I always go long. It's supposed to be an hour show. So it was, when I started doing this show in 2014, I said I would do an hour show. I did an hour show the first week or two. After that, hour and a half, 2 hours. I am going to narrow this down. We are going to start cutting it off promptly at 8 o'clock. If you want to get in on these calls, call now. Number 917-889-9924. If you have any questions or comments, get your numbers in. You get your call in, press number 1. A lot of comments on Facebook as well. I am going to cut off any callers at 8 p.m. So get your call in now, and then if we need to go overtime, I'm going to get to some of these comments on Facebook because there's some good stuff here as well. So, cheap freight. One of my drivers, Dave Casanova, is also watching. Dave has recommended a book, and he's great. Chris Voss was an FBI negotiator. It's a lot of negotiation training that we need out here right now. We got to get better at negotiating, and understanding your numbers, understanding your costs, understanding all of that will really help you with negotiation. But there's some other psychological concepts that go into negotiation. One of the psychological things that happens to us when we start talking about cheap freight is we don't play to win. We don't play to win. We play not to lose. And it's a psychological issue that a lot of people have studied. Poker players study this a lot. And I think that might be one of the reasons why this really sticks with Dave. But it's called loss aversion. People start to hold their cards a little closer. People start to take less risk to avoid losing more. So it's very, very important that you make logical decisions, understand your numbers, and avoid the whole concept of cheap freight, because it's really a psychological, emotional decision when you start talking about it that way. A lot of the comments that I'm seeing right now Excuse me while I drink some water. A lot of the comments that I'm seeing right now are about how they won't take this cheap freight. Even Richard said it's something about $1 a mile or less out of Florida. It's cheap freight. You have to know your numbers. You have to hit your numbers. Obviously, if your number, the money that you make is less than your cost, you will go broke. You will be bankrupt. You'll be out of business. You cannot do that. I understand the emotional thought behind cheap freight. The cheapest freight out there is deadheading halfway across the country. It doesn't get any cheaper than $0 per mile. If you're making $0 per mile, you are hauling cheap freight. Now, I'm not advocating go out and haul 80 cents per mile or $1 per mile cheap freight. I'm not saying that everybody needs to go out and do that. But what I am saying is you need to be smart enough to know at what point is that load more profitable than running empty. You got to play to win, not play not to lose. Avoid playing the game not to lose. Play to win. You have to know your numbers. One of the things that everybody says is, well, people that have huge truck payments and they don't have a choice, they have to run and make as much as they possibly can because they have big truck. Okay, so they're playing to win. People are trying to make money because they have to. They're playing to win. If there's money to be made, if those trucks are running that cheap freight because there's money to be made, that means if you're not hauling that freight, you're passing up dollars. Now, there's more to it than that. I get that. Time is a huge factor. Time is the biggest factor. I am all for cost per mile. You've got to know your cost per mile to really narrow in your expenses. But when you're quoting a load, time to me is the most important factor. Miles are only a factor of time and cost. That's it. And we can figure out exactly how much time and exactly how much cost is involved per mile. We know what that number is. What we have to figure out is how much time is involved. When you're quoting a load, if it's quick drop and hook because you're working for some mega carrier, maybe $1 a mile isn't too bad. Quick in and out, drop and hook. Obviously, that same $1 per mile, if it's 6 hours to load and 6 hours to unload, it's a whole different dynamic. You lose a whole day on just loading and unloading. But you have to know the time involved. Maybe you've got a tight appointment and you've got to get there. So even if it was a drop and hook, you would miss a better paying opportunity. So maybe it wouldn't work. But you have to know where that number is. You have to know the cost. The other comment that people make all the time, I won't haul for X dollars per mile, or my cost is X dollars per mile. And we'll just say, for sake of argument, $2 per mile. I will not haul for less than $2 per mile because at that point, I'm paying them to move their freight. That's not how it works. Let's say I had this discussion. Let's say that you had a load. It was, and I used these same numbers a minute ago. Let's say you had a load. It was 1,000 miles, and I said, I will pay you $4 per mile to take this load. And I actually had this discussion in a conference call with somebody. They said, I will not go into South Florida for less than $4 a mile. And I said, all right, I will pay you $4 a mile into Florida. You'll take it, right? Absolutely. Same caller. I said, what if I'm a broker and I could arrange to get a backhaul out of Miami? I could arrange that out of South Florida for $2 a mile. But in order to do it, I'd have to work out an arrangement with this customer. It'd have to be $2 a mile round trip. Would you do it? Absolutely. That's my number. I need $2 a mile. I won't work for less than $2 a mile. So they'll do it for $4 a mile in, deadhead out. They'll do it for $2 a mile in if they're guaranteed $2 a mile out. Easy math. All right. Same customer. Because of the way the market is, I can get you $3 a mile in, but they'd have to do $1 a mile out. But I can guarantee you a load. Deadhead out and guarantee you $1 a mile out. I won't do it. I won't haul cheap freight. I'm paying them to haul my freight, or to haul their freight. I'm paying them. Let's do some math. All three of those scenarios are the exact same dollar figure at the end of the day. So that $1 per mile just became an emotional decision. Now you're playing not to lose. You're not playing to win. I encourage you to understand your numbers and look at the time involved. Look at all of the other factors and play the game to win. This is business. You're in it to make money. You're not in it to prove a point. You're not in it to stand on your principles and rattle your saber. You're in it to make money. That's what business is about. Go look it up in the dictionary. You're not in it. This is not a protest. This is not a party. You're in it to make money. So get out there and make money. Do what it takes to make the most money available, most money you possibly can. That's what your goal is. Your goal is not to just run around here driving the truck for free because you're afraid that somebody else might make more than you. Play the game to win. Don't play the game not to lose. All right. Bill Hood, speak of the devil, is on the phone. Let's bring Bill on. Bill, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Kenny. How are you doing?
Great.
Hey,
Good to
Kenny.
hear
How
you.
you doing? Dude, man, you've been hitting so many of my hot button topics, man.
Yeah.
I'll talk about that last one. I just put a comment out there. It amazes me how many people, you talk about that emotional figure, is who cares who pays, right? If the inbound freight pays half the outbound freight, why does that matter? You know, if it's going to be $3 in and $1 out, $2 is your rate, who cares if the inbound pays you half the freight coming out? I mean, it's just, that to me just baffles my mind, why people will walk away from, in many cases, pure profit. You know, if you get that $4 in and you can get $1 out, it's not going to tie your truck up for, you know, it's not going to be what I call one of those dead loads that you're tied up for multiple days. You know, in those scenarios versus dead hanging out, that $1 per mile out is pure profit if you look at it from the perspective of what they're doing. Maybe not pure, maybe, you know, but it's definitely a lot better than your $0 cheap freight that you're hauling. So
Absolutely. And I've, you know, I'm a broker. I'm based out of Florida, and I have looked at the idea of just partnering up with some shippers down here that have that, you know, the so-called cheap freight, getting some good shippers that pay, you know, phenomenal money coming in, pairing those up and offering it to carriers in a round trip, not tell them what they're making per mile on each leg. Because if they don't know that, I guarantee you, and most of the people that are listening or watching know this as well. If they don't know what each leg of that trip actually paid, they wouldn't care as long as it hit their number. But if they had to do the math and figure it out themselves, they get emotional about it and they're not going to take it.
yeah, absolutely. You know, what's interesting, like Florida freight, that's in Florida and Denver. Well, Denver probably not as much because it pretty much stays flat, low. It's a consumer market. But Florida, where you got those 3 peak months or 4 peak months. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but when we had our carrier, we used to every quarter go out and visit our top 5 customers. And one of the $1 billion plus Chicago-based brokers sitting down with the CFO, and they basically, their Florida freight, they bid it at a flat rate across the year. So
Yep.
they had to price it to make sure that they were, you know, people come back and say, oh, they had a 50% margin on this load. Well, yeah, but they took a 70% loss on it in March and April. So they looked at it as a long term. How much were they going to make their minimum 13% margin on it on an annual basis, not on a load to load basis, which unfortunately so many independent drivers, they don't build a week or a month or a quarter. They basically, every load it has to stand on its own. And that's where we see a lot of, especially now with guys with $20,000+ a year insurance. These are the guys that can't afford to lose even $300 a week because they decided to run empty.
Right.
So,
Well, you hit on one point, and I think one of the biggest problems that we have in the industry is there's a huge disconnect between what drivers do, carriers do, what brokers do, and what the shippers want. And it's funny because I go to a conference. I'm kind of caught in the middle as a carrier and a broker. And I went to a conference last year called NASTRAC, and it's all about shippers building relationships with brokers and some of the mega carriers and things. And then I went to, the following week, went to Matt's. And it was funny because at lunch, 2 weekends in a row, I sat at the nice round table, and I've got these mega shippers and mega carriers and mega brokers, and I've got the next week the almost identical round table with a bunch of drivers and small micro carriers. And the comments they were making were identical, but they were aimed at the other side. So the shippers and brokers were saying, oh, the problem is the carriers are, they're killing us. And then on the other side, I hear the drivers and carriers, oh, the problem is the brokers and the shippers are killing us, just like we heard today. They don't have a clear picture of what the other side is doing. So a little bit of transparency could help, but it's not all about transparency. It's understanding the market. Now, one of the things you just said was that a lot of shippers negotiate contract rates, and they're consistent year round. If you were to buy a product in June and the same product was exponentially more expensive in January, would you still want that product? Let's say it's just potato chips. It's got to be consistently priced year round. A good example of that here in Florida is water. There is, a lot of people have heard of Zephyr Hills water, bottled water, and there's Nestle water here. They ship a lot of that water out. And they ship it because you can bottle water, but water is a cheap commodity item. They can bottle it. Shipping costs are cheap. They ship it all over the country. What's funny is April, May, and June, all of our bottled water comes from the Carolinas, northern Georgia, Tennessee, because shipping costs are so expensive, they don't ship it from here anymore. They flip the script. Now, the shipping prices are the same year round. They can ship something from Florida all the way across the country year round cheaper than they can shipping it from just down the street sometimes. So they have to be creative on how the supplier, the manufacturers have to be creative on how they arrange their shipping, and the brokers step in there and make that happen, and they sign these long-term contracts. The micro carriers don't have the ability to take the losses on some of the other runs that come up. So there's stuff that ships nationwide. There's regional factories and all this stuff. They try to equalize shipping costs over the course of the entire year, regardless of seasons, regardless of commodity and supply and demand. They have to get a handle on their costs. That's a lot of times what happens. And believe it or not, certain times of the year, especially here in Florida, the typical year-round type freight, the brokers do lose money on a per load basis shipping out of Florida during those 3 months of peak season. The rest of the time, they make up for it. So yeah, during the rest of the time, they might make, instead of making the 10 to 15%, they might make, the 30, 40% that the drivers complain about. But the other part of the year, they're negative. They're coming out of pocket to make sure that these shipments get moved. They have to get it done to make sure that they keep the customer happy year round. There's a lot more to it than just a every single load type thing. And carriers have to understand there's a bigger picture.
Yeah, that's true. That was actually what prompted me to call in was, I remember years ago and you were on the same wave at the time, which, preaching to people that you need to know more than the operational of your truck. You need to know the industry, knowing what's happening in cargo, shipping and rail shipping, and understanding the industry, the freight industry overall, logistics overall, helps you make informed decisions on what you're doing. And commodity, where you're talking about the mulch, we help partner up with a relationship I have with a broker that does a lot of McDonald's, Chick-fil-A type of freight. We went from Atlanta to Houston at $4 a mile for two pallets of blue Slurpee. I kid you not. That was the description on the BOL, blue Slurpee. Well, it was going to Chick-fil-A. Well, the agreement with a lot of these franchisees is that they can't buy product from anybody else. McDonald's franchisee can't go to Cisco and buy straws. They got to buy all their straws from McDonald's. So if McDonald's is out of Mocha Frappuccino in LA, they'll air freight it to LA so that their franchisees don't run out, because that's the guarantee that they make. compared to what I, at the same time, talking to the same broker saying that they had other customers June stop shipping product because they knew in July they were going to be able to ship it cheaper when the capacity loosened up a little bit. So knowing your market and finding customers and building great relationships with customers that have that freight that has to move regardless is key.
Absolutely.
And, so if you're tied up with, you're hauling mulch and that's your business, well, you're at the mercy of when things get tight, you've got no freight. But if you're hauling shingles and it's in the middle of the summer during the construction boom, those shingles got to move. In December, those shingles probably aren't as urgent to move. They're going to stack them up. I mean, I hauled flatbed. I remember going into those places and they had shingles piled up, 10 feet high because they just kept. They made them throughout all year and then they shipped them when the demand was high. So that's what I call it. I mean, just understanding your markets, understanding the customers, knowing more than what, operating your truck. Nobody hires an independent owner operator because they want a trucking rodeo. They want to work with a guy that's going to communicate, that they know is going to get the job done, is going to be professional. That's what they're paying for. They're not, when we talk about times like now where we start to see this little less capacity, they're paying for that driver that they can trust. They don't care that you can back into the tightest parking spot. Nobody's. I mean, hundreds of thousands of loads that we've booked, and I don't know how many you guys have booked. But have you ever had anybody call and say, "Hey, give me the guy that can back into the tightest in the tightest parking spot"?
No, but I have had them call and
nobody cares how good a driver you are.
We have had them call and specifically ask for a certain driver that sent emails and called and and we communicated well and those types of things. The customer service side of it.
Absolutely.
So, with that, Bill, I'm gonna cut you off. For everybody listening, this is Bill Hood with Velocity Group. Where can they get more information? I know you're working with getting new authorities up and running. You've got drug consortium that you can enroll people in, compliance, get everybody ready to pass their first entry audit. Where can people find you?
Best way to do is shoot a message to info@velocitygroup.com, and that's VLOCITY group.com. And please. And then we also have our YouTube channel, which you can search YouTube Trucking MBA. And I appreciate the shout out to us.
All right, Bill. With that, I'm going to let you go. Thanks for calling in. I want to expand a couple of points he made there. One is know your markets. Obviously, I plugged DAT early on. DAT is a good resource, but any load board is a really good resource on understanding the markets, even if you are not pulling load board freight. I recommend everybody has a subscription to a load board, even if you're negotiating contract freight, you're just trying to understand the markets better. And here's one of the things that you can do. Obviously, DAT, you see the screenshots in Facebook, you see a lot of the overall information, but one of the things that you can do to be more specific on exactly the lane that you're looking at is when you're booking a load into an area, let's say Knoxville, Tennessee as an example, do a search with the origin blank. Every load board is capable of this. Do a search with the origin blank. Put that in the destination. In other words, Knoxville, Tennessee is where you're going. And it'll pull all of the loads from all over the North America that are delivering in Knoxville, Tennessee. Do a search. Figure out how many loads are going there. So let's say that there's 2,000 loads that are delivering in Knoxville, Tennessee. Typically, those loads are going to be delivering sometime in the next week or so. It might be some that are posted a month out, but rarely. It's usually over the next week or so. Do the opposite search. How many loads are leaving Knoxville, Tennessee? That is now the origin. Leave the destination blank. Leaving, going anywhere in the country. Run that search. So there were 2,000 going in. Let's say that there are 4,000 shipping out. We know that posted on the load board, most of them are posted over the next few days, maybe a week or so out, of course. Some are months out maybe, but rarely. Most of them are over the next few days. That's going to give you a good indication over the next week or so what the market looks like. So before you go there, figure out the inbound to outbound ratio. How many loads are going? Because if there are trucks delivering there, those trucks are then going to look for a reload out. So how many trucks will be delivering, then how many trucks will be, or how many loads will be offered to them once they get there. So there's 2,000 loads going there, 4,000 loads available when they get there. So it'll be at least a 2-to-1 ratio coming back out. So do that search, understand the market. Do that for everywhere you go. What I do first thing in the morning when I start to look for dispatch or help my trucks is I will look at where that truck is located. I will start doing searches at every major city in a hub and spoke type process around them. So if they're in Knoxville, Tennessee, I'll do a search to Atlanta or Macon. I'll do a search to Oklahoma City or Houston or Dallas. I'll do a search to Detroit. I'll do a search to maybe Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. And I have an idea, no matter what direction that truck is going to go, where that market is best. Of course, the hot market maps are a good indication. It's load to truck ratios. It's a 30,000 foot view of yesterday's information. So it's a good way to kind of see where the best markets should be, but you should really do those inbound, outbound searches to narrow it down and get some more accurate, up-to-date information of the market right now. So that's one way to really test the waters and see what the market is. We are a little bit in overtime, and I'm going to just quickly get back into these comments on Facebook here. Let's see. Gary Shrimpster. Now, Gary is probably the most active moderator admin on the Rates and Lanes Facebook group, but he says, I haven't seen flatbed rates drop that much. We just got used to the Japanese no and getting crazy rates, but that's not working right now. It was fun while it lasted. He's referring to one of my negotiation trainings with the Japanese no. If you have a load that you're not super excited about, you throw them a number that's just outside of where you could say it with a straight face, a big number. And if they don't like it, tough. You're no loss to you. You didn't really want that run anyway. But a lot of my flatbed guys, Gary seems to have the same experience, but some of my flatbed guys doing the same thing. They throw out that Japanese no, and more often than not, they were getting accepted at those crazy high rates. Not happening now. I agree with that, Gary, because the market has tightened up. Rates are still good, though. One of my top performing truck, my top performing flatbed driver, used to tell me all the time that the Japanese no got him in trouble a lot because he was going to places he would not normally go. And he was throwing out those numbers. All my drivers, they don't say no. They quote them with something. It might not be the greatest, something that's going to make the broker thrilled, but they'll quote them something. And they were getting accepted. It's not happening as much now because there are more trucks available. But there's still not enough trucks available in most markets to make it work. Flatbed seems to have taken a little bit bigger of a hit than some of the other commodities. We will see what happens. We're in August. We'll see what happens if there are any storms that might be brewing. That was a big spike last year. As soon as we had we had 3 back-to-back major storms that hit, a lot of hurricane relief. That's building supplies. Flatbeds really benefit from that. I hate to benefit from tragedy, but it is what it is. It's business. So we'll see what happens in that market. We haven't had too many problems. We've got some fires. We've got some rain, but we haven't had any major catastrophe storms or anything. We'll see what happens. That could change the flatbed market. And it may happen mid-year, in the next few weeks. You never know. We're in the middle of the prime season. The waters in the Gulf Coast, the Gulf area are warm. You all hear about the red tide. That's partially due to the heavy rains and the warm water. That brews these storms. As soon as they get in that warm water of the Gulf, that just cranks up the juice on those things. So we'll see what happens. Trailer type matters. Comment from Bill. That's absolutely true. Obviously, the vans are always weaker. Flatbeds are stronger. You got to know those markets, though. What really matters is those markets. If you only have a van, you really have to make sure you position yourself in the right spot. And he made a comment also about record profits in the first and second quarter. The first half of the year, the brokers had record profits. They really did. And as I said, but that came from massive volume. They moved a lot more freight over the first half of this year than they ever have before. But their margins were smaller. Or percentage-wise, maybe roughly the same, but they're not making more money. It's not that the brokers are taking a bigger chunk. It's just that they're moving a lot more freight this year. FMCSA is talking about changing the hours of service. I'd imagine that will kill rates. We'll see about that. I don't think the ELDs or the hours of service had nearly as much of an impact as some people thought. I think there's a lot more to it than that. Absolutely, they did have some impact, but not nearly as much. This record rates are not a complete result of that. It's a lot of it has to do with the economy, more people back to work. There's a lot more at play here. Dave Casanova, Columbia Glider Dave on his YouTube channel. In a strong market, you can take your time. In a weak market, you really need to act quickly. Absolutely. People ask me, how far in advance should you book a load? If you are in a strong market, where it's a Japanese no market, where you write your own check, you post your truck, your phone starts blowing up. If you are in that type of a market, you want to book your freight minute of, not day of, not that morning. 3 o'clock hustle time. 3 and 5 o'clock, between 3 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon, that load is still on the broker's desk. It's got to be picked up first thing in the morning. That is when they will pay their premiums. In a tight market, that's the ideal time to book a load. If you book a load in a premium market and you're going to a bad market like Florida, you're in a van, you're going to South Florida, but you're getting, crazy good money going down there. If you get there and you try the 3 o'clock hustle, chances are you're dead heading out. If you book a load is out of there, as soon as you book your load in, you might get something. You might be able to squeeze something out of there. So in a tight market, you want to play the 3 o'clock hustle. You want to make sure you wait till the last minute. In a market where it's a little looser and you've got a lot of trucks in the area, and a lot more competition, try to be the first one in line. You want to get that load. The supply and demand that exists in the customer's market also is a factor on the rate as well. Customer supply and demand for their gold bars or mulch has heavy influence on the rates. Absolutely, and that's what I was trying to get that point across. It's not just the supply and demand of trucks. Obviously, that plays a factor on the surface, but it's the supply and demand of the product being shipped. How much demand is there for that product? Dave said gold bars were a bad idea. Watermelons would have been a better example. In Florida, watermelons are a good example. During that peak season of April, May, June, excuse me, watermelons are what have driven the market up. Watermelons peak the rates. He said it's like riding a wave. Some rode the wave to the beach. Some didn't like the last bit of the ride and are still sitting out of the water. So absolutely. Take advantage when you can, but study the markets. Things have leveled out. In April, May, June, when rates across the country, literally you look at those hot market maps and it was just all one solid dark color for all three segments. No matter where in the country you were, you could get a great rate. Absolutely no question about it. Make your money while you can. Make hay while the sun shines, so to speak. But if the market now is the way it will be. The market we have currently, where you have to look for that next load. You have to be prepared. You have to know the market. This is more typical. John says, paying off your personal overhead. Bank your money and use it to ride the wave. Absolutely. That's what I was saying. Right now, or the first half of the year, hopefully everybody put their money away and didn't go out and buy a new Harley and new jet ski, new boats, and so forth. Bank that money because the market will change. A lot of people were guilty of not doing it right. That is the time to be putting the money away. And if you're thinking about the long game and you're playing to win, you're putting that money away. You're investing it wisely. Sometimes you're investing it back in your own equipment. Like I said, putting on those fuel-saving devices or upgrading the tires to better low rolling resistance, maybe putting some aerodynamic stuff on, buying new equipment that will produce long-term results, lower your overall cost, lower your overall maintenance, fuel, whatever your cost is. Trying to put that money back into the business is a key. If you can buy a new Harley when the rates are bad, that's when you buy a Harley. But if you can't make it work, be very careful. I see the shout out. Yeah, lots of shout outs. Cost of the Richard wants to know cost of the software. I'm assuming he's talking about TruckLogix. TruckLogix, the reason I like it is because it's super cost effective. If you're leased to a carrier, And there's a couple versions. If you're a member of OIDA, you can get a discount on it. It's same program called Trucker Sphere through OIDA. But if you're leased to a carrier, it's like $8 a month for that version. If you go up and you get your own authority, you have to do invoices and so forth. It's a few dollars more. It goes up to where if you have a fleet of 15 or more trucks, it's a little over $100 and it runs everything. There's a driver app. It does document scanning right from your phone, all of that. One of the most cost-effective software programs out there that I found, which is why I'm recommending it. I don't get a kickback from it. I think it's awesome. There's other programs out there that are, a lot of pump and circumstance around them. I don't think they're ideal. They don't do invoicing. We're all about it's a big movement right now to get your own authority. You have to be able to do invoicing. I talk about